Hotel History is created for adult audiences. Content may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised. You're listening to Hotel History. We take you with us through the sordid history and scandals of some of the world's most famous and infamous hotels. I'm Dieta.
And I'm Yael. Let's get started. Welcome back to Hotel History. Today we will be discussing part 2 of the Plaza Hotel, the final part. We're starting off with the end of World War II and who currently owns it. Conrad Hilton owns it, I think, for about 10 years. He sells it in 1953.
Yeah, 1953.
53. Oh, so it was exactly 10 years.
Yeah, and he doubles his money. He gets $15 million for it.
Look at that. He's a smart man. He also, when he came in, he made his workers work throughout the night. He did a lot to fix the hotel. They were working round the clock. So he was a serious businessman, and I think he basically salvaged the hotel when it really needed help. It was also the hotel during the war or right after. It was a place that a lot of the Red Cross would be there. The soldiers coming home. It was a hot spot for the USO.
Mm-hmm.
Things
they
to raise
had tons
money.
of charity
events. A lot of
there.
Celebrities were there. So good job for the Plaza being that place. Because imagine being a soldier coming home from war and then they're like, "Hey, you can hang out in the Plaza."
Yeah,
pretty nice. It's the least they can do. That kind of concludes the post-war or the end of World War II and how the hotel adjusted. And then, the Plaza is doing well. Things are happening. And also during this time, right after the war or, the 1950s, they open a place called the Persian Room, which we've mentioned before in our first episode. And it was this fun kind of cocktail dinner club in the hotel. And on the walls was a bunch of Persian art. It was the place to be at the time. They had acts that would come in that were, everyone knew that singer was going to be at the Persian Room. A singer that was well known at the time was Hildegard.
Yeah.
We mentioned her last time too, and she has the best name. And she apparently was the it.
Yes, she was
the time in New
so
York.
huge. Yeah. So the Persian Room had been open since the 30s, but the 50s was really when it's just hits its stride. And I think the Hildegard's, her signature color was pink. And I think she's one of the only people that they would actually redecorate the Persian Room for. Once they noticed that the Persian Room was being changed to a pink theme, everybody knew Hildegard was coming, and it would create this buzz.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I also didn't know it was open in the 30s.
Yeah, it opened up during the Depression.
But that's why it probably didn't take off as much as it did after.
Yeah, it was just,
on,
I'm sure people had a little bit more money to spend during this period of time. Post-war boom.
There were other things going on during the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of great jazz artists recorded during their time there, like Billie Holiday, Miles Davis, Duke Ellington, and you can actually find at least, I believe, the Miles Davis recording that was done at the Persian Room on Spotify.
Oh, I've listened to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
really
I think
good.
It's called Miles Davis at the Plaza or something like that. Yeah, something
obvious.
very, you shouldn't have to search too long and hard for it.
Everyone has performed at the Persian Room. Ever since, throughout its existence, it was if there was a celebrity or a singer like Frank Sinatra, and we mentioned that also, just a list of all the acts. But it really takes off during this time, and someone we should mention is Kay Thompson. And Kay Thompson, she also had she was a singer, a song trainer.
Yeah, she was
for celebrity
vocal coach. Vocal she was a music arranger. She did all kinds of things.
She was in Funny Faces, the editor-in-chief of the magazine. I love that movie. And so she wanted to be a celebrity, an actress, well-known, but she kind of realized that she wasn't, her like talents didn't lie in being, you know, in front of the camera necessarily. But she goes and she performs at the Persian Room all the time. And she kind of is well known to her friends to tap into this like little girl voice act. And her friend who hears it was like, you need to make a book about this. You need to write, you need to do something. And she would turn into a 6-year-old girl, and her name was Eloise. And if you're familiar with the Plaza, then you know about Eloise. But this is the origin story. It was Kay Thompson who created this character, and she would just act like a little girl for fun, or like it's kind of weird, to be honest, but I guess funny
she had a
also
bit
at the same time.
She would do her bit.
It was a bit. Yeah, it was her bit. She would call up room service and she'd be like, I'm Eloise and I want 6 cheeseburgers, and I'm really not
coffee and lots of it.
So. yeah. First of all, I love Eloise, so I don't want to ruin it with my boy. But yeah, she basically creates this character, and her friend is the one that sets her up and says, "Okay, you need to do something about it." She's like, "Whatever, fine, who cares?" She's not paying attention. Her friend introduces her to Hilary Knight, an illustrator, the illustrator of Eloise. They meet, they get along, and then they create Eloise, which is like the most, I don't know, to me, iconic Plaza, New York city girl that like everyone, I think every kid in New York who was posh, not posh, but like whatever, wealthy, knew about her. Because I mean, I knew about her because my mom bought the Eloise book, but you know, I don't think any of my friends know. Like this wasn't like a thing. But yeah, it created this story, this girl. They started selling all these Eloise products, and they really capitalized on this Eloise character, and it made them a lot of money. To this day,
they had an Eloise room, and they still make movies. They still make Eloise movies. Yeah,
they still do.
It hasn't been that long since the last Eloise movie was made.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like that popular, but it definitely it has a following, and I'm definitely one of the followings because I loved Eloise. And when I was younger, when I was like 12 or 11, they had this scavenger hunt in New York about Eloise, and you can go to all these places. You buy a pass and you go to all these places, and then they give you like a little Eloise toy. And I wanted to collect them all. I think my mom was like, we can't do this all day. Like, we've already been out for hours. But I collected quite a lot of things. And then I have this like whole Eloise collection.
Yeah, you posted it on the Instagram.
And I shared it on
Instagram.
I was
going to say.
Yeah, that is everything I got from the scavenger hunt. The bag I got from my uncle who worked at the stock exchange, and they were doing like some sort of promotional thing. And then anything I found with Eloise or anything that reminded me of Eloise, like the pug little beanie bag or whatever, I would just start shoving things in this Eloise bag. I created my own little Eloise doll because I couldn't afford the real one.
I love it.
So I made it out like socks and staples, because the real one at the time like cost $50.
Oh my gosh.
It probably costs even more now, and my mom's not spending $50
on a doll.
On a doll, yeah. So Eloise was really dear to my heart, but I will say that Kay Thompson had a really interesting life, and she ended up staying in the hotel up until 80s, I believe, and then she got
because she had not been paying, right? She'd been staying there for free, just off of.
But no, that was the whole deal, right?
Yeah,
she created this character,
Eloise.
And they're like, you can live at the hotel.
Yeah, because they made so much merchandise off, and like so much off of Eloise that I feel like she earned her keep.
She did, but I think eventually she kind of became like a recluse. Like she kind of became weird, and I think her relationships with people kind of disintegrated, and then the hotel, it was going through financial hard times, and it's changing. You can't just, but I mean, I think the way they did it wasn't so great. I don't know. There's a lot of, it's hard to know whose side you want to be on, because, you know, she did create this character, but it's a business. And how can you just give, you know, a free
lodging to someone for decades?
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she lived there for a long time. And then afterwards, I think she was like, you can't use any of my stuff. She was like, no more Eloise for you, Plaza. And so that obviously didn't work. She passed away, and then they were like, we're going to do the Eloise thing. But the Eloise portrait, she was like, you can't write that it's Eloise. But everyone knew it was Eloise. And so like things like that. It was a lot of drama. She had a lot of friends, but then, you know, the more I read about her, I think she had a really fascinating life, but she also seemed very strange, to say the least. But Eloise is a strange character. Yeah, she's a strange little girl. But it's freaking weird. Like, if you think about it, like this child that's essentially an orphan, because you don't know where her parents are, and she gets stuck living in the hotel and gets to just use it as her personal playground, and then call in room service. And she kind of is like this neglected, sad child who acts out because she wants someone to love her. Yeah. Just like, oh, I want a turtle, which I love turtles because of her. But she just has like a turtle, and like, it's just wears Kleenex hats. And I don't know if you ever read the book. Do you know? Oh, you should. People, if you haven't, read it. So the book itself was never made for kids. It was meant for adults. I mean, it's not inappropriate or anything, but it wasn't like to teach kids a lesson. It was just ridiculous, actually. Highly recommended. I love it. But yeah, so Kate Thompson, thriving at the time of the 50s and the 60s and whatnot. Just to mention also, before we move on from Eloise and Kate Thompson, the famous Eloise portrait was stolen. I think we mentioned this before also in our last episode about it being stolen. And like, it was a bunch of college kids at the time. It was in the 50s, I think. They still don't know where it is. The one that's up today, I think, is the replacement. And Kate Thompson she hung out with all the celebrities. Like, obviously, she was the godmother of Liza Minnelli. And as the good godmother, she also was familiar with all the drugs that all those celebrities. Like, I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that Judy Garland and all these like old actors who were hooked on drugs also, like, she was, you know, not, I wouldn't say guilty, but she was on drugs. Like, she had her vitamin cocktails that the Dr. Feelgood would give her. And one of those vitamins was methamphetamine. So I'm just, you know, it's all connected. Yeah. It all makes sense. Yeah. So she that's her story. During that time also, I believe it was just, you know, people living in a hotel doing drugs was normal. I mean, it's normal it's not normal. Let me rephrase that. It was more common, I feel like.
The drugs part or the living in a hotel part?
Both. Like, that combination is just like, to me, it's a weird, I don't think a hotel today would allow that. Maybe if they're really filthy rich, but I think back then it was just like
the norm. Yeah.
The norm. But very interesting character. That will lead us into, that was the 1950s. I think that was like the peak of the 1950s.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention was this time the Plaza had a chef named Richard Boyardee. And so you might recognize that name because he is his family recipe is the spaghetti that is in canned Chef Boyardee, and it was able to be distributed because he served the spaghetti to like a major, I don't know, canned food magnate. I don't know what you call those people, but
yeah, no, it was so popular. And yeah, they were like, this is amazing. This should be in all the stores and Americans will love it. And at the time during the 1950s, like canned, kind of that, the food that we think is really unhealthy today was really popular. And partly because of the war, things have to be,
they need to be fast and easy and able to stay for long periods of time.
Yeah. And I think for moms, it was like, oh, I don't have to cook as much. I can just pop this can open and there's spaghetti.
Yeah.
So that, the TV dinners, stuff like that. So it was really popular and they thought it was a great plan, and it still exists today. But anyone who makes you feel bad if you eat it, just be like, excuse me,
this is a Plaza recipe.
Yeah. Just eat it with your pinky out.
There you go.
And just be like, this is posh from the 1950s. Don't even insult me. Yeah. So Chef Boyardee, am I saying Boyardee?
It's Italian, so just say it Italian. And then they anglicized the spelling of it, but the pronunciation I think is still the same. So I'm sure in Italian the emphasis might be somewhere else, like Boyardee or something like that. But they anglicized it and changed the spelling to Boyardee.
Yeah, they anglicized it a lot. They put in a can and then they changed the name.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I think I don't think I've ever had it, actually. Have you?
Oh yeah, I grew up eating canned spaghetti at my grandpa's house. Well, that was like the go-to lunches.
It always looked really good to me. My mom would never, and a major reason is that it's not kosher.
Oh yeah.
So it's like meat sauce and stuff, but my mom was never into like packaged stuff like that. But I always wanted to, and I still haven't. So one day
I remember it being good, but you know how kids will just eat anything. I have no idea if it was actually good or not.
It's probably not. But, no shame to anyone. So yeah, two very interesting things that come out of the Plaza that I think make a big impact on American culture and society. I think is the spaghetti in a can and Eloise. So that's pretty cool. I mean, I think the Plaza has a lot of influence with a lot of things, but it was interesting to learn about that.
Yeah, I definitely didn't see Chef Boyardee coming. That was fascinating.
We're in the 60s, and what's happening in the hotel during that time?
Well, in 62, actually, a small theater opens in the basement of the Plaza, which is very bohemian to me. Like I that does not sound to me like something that a really luxurious hotel would do. So it just adds more to this interesting character that the Plaza has had through all these years. But yeah, it was called Plaza 9. And it was actually created to showcase a specific performer named Julius Monk, who did like satiric reviews. But it included other plays. This was some interesting names like El Grande de Coca-Cola and Dames at Sea. So I can imagine what types of reviews these were. But they did launch the careers of lots of comedians like Lily Tomlin. So got some good stuff out of it.
Really? That was at the same time? Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Now I really want someone to find like an old script and redo these old plays. I want to see what they were.
Probably horrible, to be honest, just by the names. Dames at Sea.
So that's what was going on in the art house world in the basement of the Plaza. Meanwhile, upstairs.
Yeah, upstairs where the rest of the world is. So during the 60s, a big band comes around, makes waves, and if you can guess who that is, you will feel really smart. It's the Beatles. The Beatles. So a little bit before we get into the Beatles, we just want to also mention again, like, Hilton owns the Plaza from 1943 to 1953. He sells it to Sonny Sonnebenn for $50 million, and then the manager of the hotel at the time. So now we're going to get into the manager of the Plaza during this time. He starts out when Conrad is still there. And do you want to tell the story?
Yes, so I think he meets, so his name is Alphonse Salamone, and he is a elevator operator in New Orleans, and I want to say 47. And Conrad Hilton is staying at this hotel and just really likes, I guess, his charm or maybe his work ethic. I'm not really sure, but he just really liked Alphonse and gave him his business card and said, "Hey, if you're ever in New York, I would love for you to work for me." And so Alphonse does. He moves to New York and immediately looks up Hilton and gets on as assistant manager at the Plaza.
And his first day.
Oh, and his first day was god awful.
It was a lot.
The worst first day possibly of all time. It starts with there being a dead body found in one of the rooms. It turns out to be a playwright, and his Salamone ends up having to try to deal with that, and also trying to comfort like the grieving, I don't know if it was husband or lover. I'm going to say lover because that sounds better. Sounds more dramatic.
Yeah,
playwright. Yeah. So that's how his day starts off. And then there's a strike at the docks. And so now the passenger ships aren't leaving on time. So now none of the Plaza guests are checking out like they were supposed to. And all of the incoming guests aren't able to get into any rooms. So there's pandemonium from 50 plus guests all yelling at the same time about wanting into their rooms. So that keeps going. And then later on in the day, a Plaza widow decides that this is the moment. This is her moment to address this wrong that is being done to her. She swears that one of the housekeepers or maids is purposely ruining the lining of her jacket. It's been sliced open and it's happening all the time. And it's just old and it's wearing and tearing from as far as Salamone can tell.
The widows are fucking nuts. Like, they're all nuts. The more stories that come out about them. It's like, even if the guy was horrible, let's say the manager was horrible, which he wasn't, I wouldn't even be like on the widow side. I know they're full of shit.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about this manager is that he's really involved in the hotel. He does a really good job. And his whole family lives there. They live on the top floor in like some abandoned suite or something. Yeah,
the I think what is now probably part of someone's condo and is very revamped and nice, but at the time had just one of those rooms that they'd kind of let go.
Yeah, I feel like real estate wasn't the same in New York, so they were like, "Oh, it's fine." Now it's like worth $53 million.
Yeah, at the time it was like the maid's quarters.
Salamone. Is it Salamone or Solomon? I'm
going to guess wrong? Since it's Italian, I think that they pronounce the E's at the end of the words where we don't, but I'm not positive.
Salamone.
Yeah, I just imagine it in an Italian accent and go with that.
Okay. So Salamone, every time I laugh when I say his name, he gets an offer that his daughter thinks he should not refuse, but he was like, no, thank you. And that is for 4 famous British singers to come stay at the Plaza. And that's the Beatles.
Yeah. So they okay the reservation at first because nobody knows who they are, because they made the reservation like months before the Beatles really became like a really
Are
big.
You sure
yeah.
They didn't know.
Yeah, or whoever took the reservation, I think, didn't know. And then whenever it got closer to time, they realized who it was actually booked for. And that's when they were like, I don't think we can have them stay here. That's too much for us.
Yeah, people, they were crazy. There was Beatlemania. They were coming in to do the Ed Sullivan Show, the famous Ed Sullivan Show. Sorry. Meeting my words here. I'm so excited to talk about the Beatles.
Yeah, but his daughter throws a fit when she finds out that he's canceling their reservations.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah, she was like bawling. I would have too. I would have been like, you don't love me if this is what you do.
I think I would have approached it like, you are missing out on a historic opportunity and I need to meet them. And this is all I want in my life. But it ends up being chaos a little bit.
Yeah, they do. They do eventually say, okay, yes, you guys can stay here.
But there was so many people outside the hotel waiting for them. So many girls trying to sneak into the hotel.
Yeah, just hanging out in the lobby, biding their time.
The widows not knowing who they are, what's going on, or what decade they're in. And the funny thing is when they kick out the girls that are trying to like sneak in.
Yeah, I think they like snuck into some boxes, right? They're like trying to hide themselves.
Oh, they only found that out later. So they're like, we have a package for them. And they're like, who are you? Knowing who, like, these were just teenagers. They're like, no, we have a package. And they're like, no, get out. So the girls holding the package were like, fine. And then a girl pops out of the actual box that they're sending up. And then people tried to like scale the building or something. It was insane. Teenage girls are crazy, but this sounds like another level.
Yeah. Meanwhile, like the Beatles are probably some of the quietest rock star guests the Plaza has ever had. They just like keep ordering tea and Coke, and they jumped on the bed.
Coca-Cola, not Coke, that other Coke.
Yeah, Coca-Cola. Sorry, not that Coke.
Yeah, they're very polite. Everything was fine when they left. They didn't damage the hotel. When they got there, they got to meet Salamani's kids. And I think one of them didn't even realize who they were meeting. It was like so funny. Just like probably later on, the kids are like, oh, I mean, other than the daughter knew, but
her younger brother, I think, was just like, okay, cool.
He saw everything as a business opportunity. Once he realized, he started selling everything that they touched and people would buy it. And he even claimed they touched things that they never touched. And he's like, oh yeah, this pillowcase. And it was like his pillowcase. His, not the Beatles. And everyone's like, I'll buy it from you. So smart kids, they definitely took advantage of the Beatles coming over, which I kind of think is really funny. And also during that time, so the kids got to meet 3 of the Beatles there because John Lennon, being John Lennon, went in disguise with a ski mask in the crowd. So no one knew it was him. And he's just walking and getting away. But like, who walks around with a ski mask and you don't ask questions?
What month was it? Was it really cold at the time?
I think it was rainy, or I don't know if that was a different event that happened, but I'm not sure. It must.
So maybe it was weather appropriate.
Yeah, they were like, oh, okay. But isn't that funny? Like, imagine John Lennon sitting next to you while you're like screaming for the Beatles. He's like, "What's going on?" And you're like, "Oh my god, it's the Beatles! How do you not know?" It's like, oh, okay. So fun things. I think it was really good for business, but I think it was incredibly overwhelming for the staff and for everyone who worked there.
I love that they are very accustomed to royalty and know exactly how to handle that situation. But rock stars, that's a different story.
I think, it definitely felt like this is something that I've never had to deal with. But I also think that the Beatles was like a whole new thing.
Yeah.
And just like in general, there was never anything quite like it. And I think that it was the start of the rock band coming to hotels and kind of like, I don't think they knew how bad it could get.
Yeah.
You know, they were like, oh, because I think if it was the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin, they would have been like, no, we don't want you to ruin our hotel. Yeah. I think it's just the start. So they kind of didn't even know what they were getting into. And they were British, so they were polite. They made a good impression. I think they could have fooled some people into believing that all musical bands are so nice and proper.
Yeah.
They're really not. But it sounded like a really fun experience. Like if you got to live in New York or even be around that just to see that happening. And, the manager's kids got to bring their friends.
Yeah.
Like they got to witness all this stuff happening. It was really cool to experience that. That must have been such a great childhood. Yeah. So after the Beatle pandemonium ends, there's other festivities happening at the Plaza. Plaza is the location for one of the most famous parties like of the century. And that is the Black and White Ball by Truman Capote.
Yes. So for those of you that don't know, Truman Capote is a very famous writer who wrote In Cold Blood, Breakfast at Tiffany's. Truman Capote wanted this to be the event. He wanted to really make it stand out in everybody's mind for years to come. But I guess he felt like it would be a little too conceited to host a party for himself. So he makes it in honor of Katharine Graham, who was the publisher of the Washington Post. But it doesn't really say like why it's in her honor. Like she'd been the publisher for like 3 years at that point. So it wasn't like her new job. He just needed an excuse.
They were really good friends, right?
Yeah. So I guess
he was like they wanted to make a party.
Yeah, they just wanted to have a party.
Very self-involved, and he knew this, and he was like, "We'll make it for you." But
yeah, so the guest list ends up having 540 people on it, but because obviously he didn't feel like he could invite everyone, but it becomes the most sought after invitation of probably the decade. Like people were offering money, they were threatening to commit suicide if they didn't get invited. It was insane.
It was dramatic.
Yeah,
it was a little over the top.
It was very over the top.
Yeah, it's crazy because I think the party itself cost like $11,000.
Oh wow!
It cost like $10,000, something like that. And someone offered to pay that much just to get invited. He's like, no.
Oh my goodness.
So he knew what he was doing. This wasn't just like a money-making business. It was like status. Oh, yeah. He was really into being
He loved
cool.
It. Yeah. And so much so that even he would invite one person, but then not invite their significant other. So it was like causing strife in families.
He loved the drama. That would have been such a great reality TV show.
Oh yeah.
So who were some of the people on this guest list?
Frank Sinatra. I remember for sure. There were, it really it took all of his social circles and just shoved them together because there was writers, musicians, politicians, socialites.
And it was also a combination of old Hollywood and the older generation mixed with the younger generation. So people who are still alive today have gone to this party. I think Betsy Johnson was there, like all these young models. Every single famous person during the 1960s, and soon to be famous person, where they were there. It was an insane guest list. I think every designer, Andy Warhol, Lauren Bacall, who else? Like politicians, Linda Bird Johnson. Apparently that that was the president's daughter.
Yeah.
But he excluded her boyfriend, the actor George Hamilton. Like, that is such a specific move right there. Like, what were you trying to prove?
I guess he just didn't like him. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely
Gloria
one way to
Vanderbilt.
tell one of your friends that you don't care for their partners.
I think, it's like he probably said something mean to him or something he didn't like. And he was like, well, you're not invited to the coolest party of the world of all time. Of famous authors. He was also, because he was an author, there was Norman Mailer and like all these other people, princesses.
Yeah.
I
but
mean,
then also just regular people.
everyone.
Like he invited his doorman from his apartment building. So these regular.
Because he's the keeper of all the secrets.
That's true.
That doorman knows everything. And I don't know, maybe he didn't invite them necessarily just to be nice, but to be like, you know how to handle situations. Yeah. And also maybe, because if let's say the doorman comes, he'll know who pissed off Truman Capote and who he likes and doesn't like. And then later on, when he's working, it's like, oh, I want to see Truman. And he'll be like, I remember you from the party and you ain't seeing him because you were a dick. Like he needed to keep him in the know. I think that I was mistaken. The party cost $16,000, and he was offered $11,000 by someone. And he said no thanks. And even after the party ended, I think the party was up until like 3:30. Yeah. There were after parties. And everyone went to different locations, like depending on who your circle was. You went to like the hole in the wall bar with like Frank Sinatra or like this club or this apartment. And just, man, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall. Yeah. Like that would be so cool. So the manager's daughter got to stay up and watch us all happen.
What a cool childhood she had. Wow.
I know. But as fun as this was, there was some backlash to his party because it was kind of like at a time, it was, I believe, 1968, right? So right afterwards, a lot of people were just kind of like making fun of it or, after they weren't invited, they were like, oh, okay, we weren't invited. While you're having your party, there's like a serious war going around because it was the start of the Vietnam War.
So now it starts to be seen as, first it was, the last great American party full of glamour, but now it's starting to look very tasteless and frivolous. Like, so happy that you guys get to have, your fun, fickle lives full of parties that don't matter. The rest of us are dealing with the real world.
Yeah. Especially like racial tensions were growing and Vietnam War and all that stuff. But that actually did affect Truman Capote. Like he did feel bad and he ended up, he had a lot of issues. He ended up being an alcoholic and I think he died of drug use and alcoholism. And it was sad. It wasn't his fault. Like all this shit was happening and he was cool enough to make a party. Like, I don't think he was like a terrible person because
no,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
he just wanted to have a fun party and just made it a little too public. Yeah.
But also I think maybe they were just butthurt, like the people who weren't invited.
Yeah.
And they were just like, oh, well, you just don't care about like things. It was kind of like virtue signaling.
Yeah.
The time and I don't know, that doesn't make you a better person because you were invited to the party, so you have to like bring down another person. But it's sad, but it's still, I think I would have loved to go to that party.
I would have. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the whole like that was really the end of an era. I think the world is changing drastically during this time. A lot of things are happening. We got people fighting for civil rights. We're getting, people who are in the streets trying to protest the war. That's what I was looking for, the word protest. And then protest other things like, amongst a lot of segregation happening. But Betty Friedan, the feminist, she goes to the Oak Room, the Plaza Oak Room, which is still segregated for men and women, and makes a reservation with her groupies of feminists. And they let her in. She sits down, but they take away her table.
Yeah, they took the reservation and they didn't, I guess they just assumed she was someone's secretary making a reservation. And so they took the reservation and then were shocked when it was actually women coming in to eat. So yeah, they let them sit down and then just took their table away. So they all just kept sitting in the shape of the table, waiting to see what would happen next. And I think some men started offering them food off of their tables and stuff. But yeah, eventually they were finally well, okay, well, I guess we're going to leave now. We made our point.
Yeah. And they ended up protesting.
Yeah, they protested outside. Don't worry, we've been feeding ourselves for years.
Yeah. Oh, we have been using knives and forks for years, fellas. Don't worry, we'll pay our way.
Yeah.
It's cute little
I love their sign.
But if no one knows, Betty Friedan is the one who wrote the Feminine Mystique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Super famous feminist book. So, and eventually after this, a few months later, it
within almost no time. Yeah. So then it was women could come whenever they wanted.
I think there was two things happening. I think the hotel itself didn't care. They weren't we want traditional ways, but I think they had a bunch of rich traditional men who were this is a boys' club, and we like it that way. But they also thought ahead. They're yeah, but how many of you are left? The world is changing. We need to have these female diners because we need the money. Yeah. We're losing out on a bunch of money because women aren't allowed to eat here, and you guys are old and dying out. And I also think that, sure, the manager and everyone thinks it's morally wrong. There shouldn't be, segregation. But I think there was a lot of other things at play. And I think eventually, just logic.
Yeah, logic and capitalism. They're this is a lot of money sitting on the table.
Yeah. And that kind of ends on a good note.
Yeah, another great thing that happened in 1969 was that the Plaza officially became a New York City landmark. So they weren't allowed to change any of the outside of the facade. So that way, because tons of old buildings were getting razed to the ground, and so that new apartment buildings could be built. So everyone was freaking out about that, and they got the Plaza protected.
Oh, yeah, that's true. A lot of old historic hotels were getting knocked down and changed in general, right?
Yeah, apartment buildings, skyscrapers, out with the old and with the new.
That's great. I think, a lot of people were getting worried because you see this beautiful old building. Even just reading about it, all these mansions and these things that existed when the Plaza started out, it doesn't exist anymore. And I'm just well, where did it go? That's so much cooler than just
this.
A Target or whatever. That's good for the Plaza, but that also causes some future problems, but it is what it is. I'm in support of not having don't destroy the Plaza.
Yeah.
keep somewhat of the historical aspects to it, even if you need to change it on the inside and update the plumbing.
Yeah,
sure. But other than
just don't destroy the beauty of it to make it steel. Boring steel and glass.
And also some of the modern designs of things. I'm just no,
let it have some character.
Okay, so now the 60s are over. The tensions in the country, around the world, have definitely reached a peak. There's war going on, and now we enter the rocky road of the 70s.
Yeah, tough decade for everybody.
You think that's when they developed that ice cream flavor?
That would make so much sense. Although I feel like they should have made one named after serial killers. I feel like the 70s was just all serial killers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there was one happy thing. In 1971, the Plaza's publicist decides to do a publicity stunt. So she makes a reservation for L.E. Fant. And they forgot to tell the clerk on duty that this was happening. So they bring in an elephant as a guest of the Plaza, and the clerk refuses to check the elephant in and is like, what is going on here? No, get this thing out of here. And so they finally, like, someone clues her in on it, and they're like, no, it's a thing. We're doing this. It's been approved. So they finally let the elephant in, and they like put her on a service elevator and send her up, and then bring her back down and take her out the back.
How big was this elephant, and
small enough to fit in the service elevator? Yeah, the elevator, because I remember the book said specifically how many pounds the elevator could handle, and the elephant was less.
Oh, okay. So it must have been like a baby elephant.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a very little elephant. I don't think a fully grown elephant could have.
A very little elephant. That's an oxymoron. But I think it was maybe like a baby one.
Probably so. Yeah.
Or one who's,
so that's fun and cute, diet. And that's probably the last fun and cute thing that happened at the Plaza for a while.
That is such a weird stunt.
I know. They didn't really talk about the logic behind it. Not really sure what. I mean, the Plaza is well known for being animal friendly, but I don't know that they need to remind people that they allow jungle animals in, because that didn't work out well.
Yeah, and I think at this time, the Sonnabend is still owning the hotel, and it's now his son is starting to manage it.
His son Roger has taken over when Sonnabend Sr. died. Okay,
so that's where weird shit starts to happen. Like, not weird shit in like a spooky way, but just definitely.
Yeah, they're the Plaza's experimental. They're trying some things out.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, like New York City at the time was on the verge of bankruptcy, and the Plaza was in the red. It was not making money. So, they took this as an opportunity to think maybe they needed to modernize the Plaza a little bit. Like maybe it was too stuffy and old fashioned. So, so Roger goes after specifically. Which room was it that was it the Edwardian room?
I thought it was the Persian room.
No, the Persian room stays as it is until it closes. Because it was one of the dining. I think it was the Edwardian room. Yeah, that he takes out or covers up all of the beautiful oak and the old fashioned look it had going for it, and turned it into the tulip room. And so it's lots of green and pink, right?
And pink. And velvet.
Yeah. Imagine a colorful 70s, and that's what you've got.
Yeah. People were horrified. There was like literally an article written, this man is raping the Plaza.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not. Relax. Like, people are very protective over the Plaza. I mean,
I they don't like change.
To do, and I give him credit, but it wasn't the right move.
Yeah. He should have probably done a focus group or something to see how people were going to take it.
Yeah. But, I think also mentioning the Persian room, the Persian room was not doing very well.
Yeah, no, they were losing so much money, like $800,000 a week. Is that what it was? A month?
I think it was a year. It might have been a year.
Hope so.
Okay, a month. Dear Lord, I hope no, I think it was a year. If it took them that long to close it, I say bad business. I think it was a year. I think, like the supper club vibe, the dinner and a show kind of way of doing it was out of style. I mean, the 70s was in modern times.
Well, also the Persian room was one of the only places that offered dinner and a show that late. Like the second show would start at midnight and you wouldn't get out until 2 or 3 a.m. And that was starting to be really dangerous in 1970s New York. So I think
that's
that,
true.
so I think that they just didn't have, people just weren't willing to risk it as much anymore. So they, in 78, they closed the Persian Room, and I think it became a Studebaker dealership for a minute and then a dress shop.
Yeah, I think it had a lot of different replacements. It's now, I believe, the Champagne Room or the Rose Bar or something, where the lobby is.
Yeah, I
think
so.
It's the Rose Bar. I'm pretty sure it definitely, it doesn't exist at all anymore.
It's gone.
But it's there. It's been a lot of things, and the thing is that the Persian Room also, those, like the old act Hildegard, like these things were old and stuffy. The 1970s,
like this cabaret style.
The musical, like you can't have rock and roll bands play at the Persian Room.
Yeah.
And that's what people were doing. I mean, at least that's what I think. I'm assuming this is why it didn't work out.
Yeah, and I think that the crowd that enjoyed that was probably a lot older by then, and they weren't going out and staying out until 3:00 in the morning anymore.
I mean, there was chaos in New York. It was disgusting. There was a lot of strikes.
Yeah, there's a lot of garbage.
Garbage strike.
There was
just sounded awful.
Crime is up.
It was a bad time for New York. And I think that with a lot of crime, a lot of drugs, and piles of garbage, even in front of the Plaza, and the Plaza would get held up, and people would get robbed, and a lot of craziness happened in this really fancy, nice part of New York. So I think that
there was even like a pop-up marketplace would happen at night in front of the Pulitzer Fountain, where people were like selling hot dogs and trinkets and drugs. So it was just not quite the same as it had been. Yeah,
lots of drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people who were staying at the hotel were like, we're just going to go for a quick walk, get some snacks and drugs, and come back and, have a nice evening. I don't know how people lived in the city at that time. And my parents lived in the city. My mom lived, I think, in the Upper East Side. And my dad lived in the Village. He was squatting in a building with the Hells Angels.
Oh.
Or at least they were there. Yeah. I told you the story before, but I wanted to just mention it. Like, this is the time of New York where it was not good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there was a hostage situation, too. So there was a hostage situation in 72. The bomb threat happens in 73. These constant like robberies going on. So yeah, if that was happening at the Plaza, I can't imagine what the rest of New York was like.
Also, during this time, there was an assassination attempt against the son of a Chinese nationalist leader, Chiang Kai-shek. The attack took place at the Plaza. So when he was trying to go into entering the Plaza, the revolving doors, a Taiwanese, I guess, citizen or something tried to shoot at him. Does not succeed. But the man, this guy, Chiang Kai-shek, continues on doing what he was there to do, which was like have a speech or something. And he just like doesn't mention the fact that he almost got shot at. I mean, almost died. He did get shot at.
That is.
They did, I think, find a guy who tried to assassinate him, though. But yeah, it kind of like, I feel like the world was just out of control.
Yeah.
It just sounds like anything goes. People were like, I'm done. I want to just do what I want to do, and I'm going to shoot and kill whoever I want. I don't care.
Imagine if the internet had existed back then the way it does now. Oh my God.
Well, I actually think that this is I don't think people will agree with this. I think the internet keeps most bad people too preoccupied fighting in the comments. Actually. So I always say this. People are like, yeah, it fuels hate, and it does. But at the same time, if these people were too busy, like fighting some troll in the comments, I mean, they're the troll, but there's also the trolls of the trolls. I'd rather you be sitting at home 3:00 in the morning, be like, meh, 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 than like, I have a gun right now, I'm going to go shoot up wherever.
Yeah.
Obviously, horrible things happen either way, but I think that they didn't have the internet and they had too much time on there.
They were nothing to distract them.
There was also this doctor who was staying at the hotel, and someone tried to stab him and mug him. I believe, like, both at the same time.
Oh my
God. So people in general, like, just so many things in the news, and just New York being, this is, I think, where New York, I mean, it got its reputation before as well, but it really peaked in the 70s. So people are like, I don't really want to go and visit New York if I don't have to. And it showed because people stayed away. They were losing a lot of money. Like the occupancy rate dropped to about 65%. It was in the red, as you said. It was losing millions of dollars. It wasn't good. It was not a good time.
Yeah. The owner of the plaza, though, was at least trying to do something to make the world a better place. Roger Sonnabend was quite the activist, actually. He was very much against the war, and he was a civil rights proponent. He actually created a company-wide goal of hiring 150 Black executives, I think, by the end of the decade. So he was, or at least by the end of his reign there, because they did end up selling the plaza in the mid-70s. But yeah, so he was doing his part to at least try to make things a little bit better.
Yeah, he seemed to be pretty, like, liberal. And he also went from, like, having this kind of more traditional life to, the more hippie life. He, like, leaves his wife and kids. And,
he, like, went through a midlife crisis, I think. And
yeah, it's every time I read about that, like in the book, I think of Mad Men. I think of Mad Men a lot when I was reading this. And how you see the change of this, like, traditional family man, and just in general how the culture is and what's popular, and then slowly, like, also it took place in New York, so like just so many similarities and how things have changed drastically.
So now the plaza is going to change hands again in 75. That's when Weston buys the plaza for $25 million. So the price is steadily increasing. If you remember, Sonnabend bought it for $15 million, I believe. So it's now $25 million. And they spend $32 million refurbishing it, it was crumbling. So they were trying so hard to bring it back some of its glory.
I mean, that makes sense. It wasn't doing well. And then also this guy's, I think his goals in life shifted. It was no longer like, let's meet the plaza. He had other interests, and it sounds about right that it would be in such bad shape.
Yeah, still a good businessman, though, because they did not sell the Everett Shin murals in the Oak Room along with the plaza. They said, no, we're keeping those, which Weston Hotels was like, okay, fine, we don't care. But then it actually turned out to be a really big deal because the New York citizens did care, and they wanted those murals in the plaza. So the Weston had to shell out an additional $1 million to get those back.
Yeah, that was smart of his end, son of it. He just made $1 million. It's funny how the New Yorkers, the ones that are like, no, it has to be there. And it's just like, I'm not saying it's not important and it's not a part of history, but you can also replace it with other works of art.
Yeah, there's other art out there, but public outrage seems to be a big swayer of what happens to the plaza.
Well, because they have power.
Yeah.
Because it's usually like they're represented by something or someone, or they have influence with a union or a group. And then that's where things get tricky.
Yeah.
Because I think if it was just a group of people being like, boo, let's keep this, the Plaza would be like, no. Here's some tea. Now go away. But the people who are in charge come across unions and organizations so often that cause trouble. They know not to mess with them.
Yeah.
It's not going to go down well.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess as we move into the 80s, things they start to recover finally. Everything, there's kind of an economic boom, I think, and New York recovers, the Plaza recovers, so much so that it actually sells for an incredibly, I would say, inflated price the next time it sells in 1988, which is to Donald Trump.
Yeah, how much does he buy it for?
So Weston bought it for $25 million in 75. In 88, Trump buys it for $407 million.
Damn. Okay, so the economy did bounce back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and Trump definitely overpaid for it. Like, he wanted it real bad.
Yeah. No, Trump had it was his Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
Letter, like that's what he called it.
Yeah, I think that's what he called it. Yeah.
He was obsessed. I think he also had this like New York rich childhood, and he remembers going to the Plaza and have fond memories. And it also represents this like, the olden glory days of wealthy, bored people. I love the Plaza. I do. But I'm just saying, don't hate me. I'm just saying it definitely represents this kind of like old rich person that he relates to or wants to be. And it's very classy. And I think he wants to be this classy person. I mean, he's not, but he definitely
aspires to that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Or what he thinks it is. Yeah.
So now we are entering the 80s. And probably, in my opinion, one of the most interesting points in the Plaza's history. How do you feel about it?
I think it's fascinating. Yeah.
1975, Weston buys it from Sonnabend. And then 1988, Trump buys it from Weston.
Mm-hmm.
But before Trump is Trump, he actually offers half jokingly to Weston or someone Weston knows, I'll buy the Plaza from you for $50 million. And the Weston says, no. And who's Donald Trump? Few years later.
He's a little bit better known.
Yeah.
And he definitely spent more than $50 million on it.
Yeah. That's like a crazy jump though, right?
Yeah.
That I feel like, was the Plaza even worth the $400 million?
No, I think everybody had valued it at around like $250 million or something, but not $400 million.
But was he in a bidding war with someone?
There were some other interested parties. Yeah. And I think he just wanted to just give the biggest possible number so that nobody else could stand a chance.
Right. He loves the Plaza. I think he still does.
Yeah. He was obsessed. He wasn't going to let this opportunity slip him by.
He did end up buying it for the $400 million. Or to be more specific, $495,000 per hotel room.
Oh, wow.
Big money.
Yeah. But at the time he had no problem at this point securing that money. Like, the banks were just foaming at the mouth to get to work with him because he has this real estate empire. So they were just throwing money at him. Like, he didn't have to put, I don't think, any of his personal money or guarantees. Like, banks were just like, we want a piece of the pie. We want the action. Here's all the money you need.
Yeah. It was definitely they thought he was too big to fail.
Yeah.
But it turns out he makes a dent.
Yeah.
He definitely.
The bigger you are, the harder you fall.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And he does end up owing personal money. Like financially, he puts his own money in. But that's a little later where he gets into financial troubles.
Yeah.
The first thing he does when he buys the Plaza is he puts his wife, Ivana Trump, in charge.
Yes, he makes her the president.
And that was an interesting experience for those who worked there.
Yeah, she kind of had a Miranda Priestley Devil Wears Prada vibe, from what I understand. She definitely wanted to improve the place. She did. I mean, she really made a lot of good changes to it aesthetically, but she definitely expected things done a certain way and done quickly. And like, there's even a story of her, you know, she can see the Plaza from Trump Tower. And so she would every morning, she would get a pair of binoculars and inspect the property from there. And if she saw anything amiss, she would make a phone call and, you know, tell them, fix this immediately.
Yeah, she was a micromanager, to say the least. People were not so happy working under her. And I think a lot of people quit because of her. She just sounded, she might have done really well for the Plaza, but
for the employees,
yeah, it sounded stressful. And then it got even more stressful when her and Trump had marital issues.
Yes, because then the employees had two bosses. Basically, Trump would tell them one thing, Ivana would tell them something else, and they're not sure which one they're supposed to listen to.
A lot. He definitely, I don't know if it was Ivana or Trump himself that they kind of made it a little like, they like put gold everywhere.
That was Ivana, yeah. Well, she had real gold too. She had them remove the fake gold accents and replace it with real gold.
Oh, okay. That's not so bad.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought it was like a lot worse than it was.
I think because there was an article that I think they like dubbed her style hot to excess because she wanted to make it classy and fancy, but then she went over the top with it. Like all of the ashtrays, there was a person whose job it was to just go from ashtray to ashtray. Keep in mind, this is the 80s. So people were smoking indoors.
Oh, yeah.
That had stamping, like cleaning the ashtrays and stamping them with the Plaza seal, like all day long. That's what they had to do, is make sure that there could never be more than like 2 cigarette butts in an ashtray.
Oh my God. Yeah, she was really into it.
Yeah. Like she showed them how she wanted the bathroom's floors to be scrubbed. Like she got down on her hands and knees and showed them what she wanted.
Right. Yeah. Very, very particular.
Yeah.
Woman. She also had something to prove, because I think that for her, it was like, I'm not just some trophy wife. I'm now the manager of the hotel, and I'm going to show you that I know what I'm doing and I'm a real businesswoman. And I think her and Trump had this like, I need to prove myself complex going on constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what rich, powerful people do. They make it difficult for everyone.
Yeah, well, and she definitely had to prove herself after he gave her the position. He had basically made a statement to the press saying that I'm going to pay her $1 and all the dresses she can buy for her salary. So he gave her this amazing position and then immediately denigrated her. So
yeah, because he's a dick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We're not supposed to our opinions, but no, that's kind of mean of him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Seriously.
Yeah, she worked really hard. And it's not like,
she had been managing one of his casinos in Atlantic City before he moved her to the Plaza. So it's not like she didn't have any experience and he just was giving her something to do. Like she was good at it.
A few years in, they start to have marital problems. And I think that causes some issues. And also the former president starts seeing someone else on the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he actually they had just like finalized their fourth nuptial agreement like a few days before he started having his affair.
Oh, that was like right before. Wow, he really is a bad person. But so he starts having this affair with Marla Maples, this socialite actress, keeps her around not far from the Plaza and where he lives.
Yeah, in a different hotel that he owned, like 3 minutes walk from the Plaza.
What is the point of their relationship that starts to go south? There was something that happened.
I think she found out about it. I think she found out about the affair.
Yeah, but weren't they in Atlantic City and he threatened her about, or is that a different?
I think, that was actually that happened whenever he moved her to the Plaza. She was managing Atlantic City. Is that what you mean? Where he told her, like, you come home.
He's like, oh, you have to take care of your kids.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons he moved her to the Plaza from Atlantic City, is because he wanted her to be around more. Like, they were barely seeing each other because she was always in Atlantic City and he was always in New York. So he wanted her to come home. He basically told her, you need to come home and be a wife and take care of your kids and be here. And so I think their marital problems already existed, and then this affair, I think, just made them so much worse.
Yeah, and he was not that subtle about it. Like, everyone knew in the Plaza, they all knew.
Yeah.
And then when she did find out, he tried to fire her.
Yeah,
right?
he tried to fire her from her job at the Plaza, and like they like locked her out of her office, and all of the employees aren't sure like who they're supposed to be listening to. It was they definitely brought their drama to work.
Oh my God, imagine like cranky Ivana walking around. She's already a high maintenance to begin with. But also to mention, Trump and her got married at the Plaza. They get divorced, and guess where Trump and Marla Maples gets married?
Oh my gosh.
At Plaza. In her territory. He basically tells her to go fuck herself. And when they get divorced, after they negotiated their prenup like multiple times, if he finds out that he cheated or whatever the agreement was, is that he has to pay her $10 million. Mm-hmm. And so when they got divorced, he had to pay her. And he would go on to say he's such a good ex-husband because he paid his ex-wife $10 million. And who would do such a thing? Such an amazing person does that. It's like, sir, you had a contract.
Yeah.
And if you didn't uphold that contract, then you would have been sued. That doesn't make you a good person.
Just you did the bare minimum of what you agreed to.
You cheated. Like, you're a piece of poopy. Yeah. And you got caught. And then just like the way he said it was so Trump.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
He was just the greatest ex-husband of all time.
Yeah. And I mean, it's good for Ivana she probably knew what was gonna go down. I mean,
probably so. The fact that like she had just, because they renegotiated their prenup 4 times. So the fact that she kept upping how much he was going to have to pay her if they got divorced makes me think that she was like, okay, I need to protect myself even further from this, or I need to make it like, I really need to make it hurt if this goes down.
Yeah. I mean, it sounded every time he would do something, she probably renegotiate. Every time he would pull some shit and she's like, you sure you want to do that? Okay.
It's going to cost you.
Let's raise the bar here. He was not, in my opinion, not a good businessman. So yeah, drama is going down. And that's personal drama. But then financially, how is the Plaza doing?
Oh my gosh. Just the whole real estate market is not doing great. So there's a recession going on. The real estate market collapses. There's that savings and loan crisis. going on. So all of these things are happening at the same time, which all add up to Trump owing $1 billion in personally guaranteed funds and several billion total. So across his real estate empire, he now owes so much money because they kept just throwing it at him, and he would take it.
And he's not a good businessman.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. No, I don't hate to say it. I love to say it because he's not. And he ends up doing something really bad for the Plaza. And that is basically making the Plaza go bankrupt.
Yep.
The first time in history.
Yeah, they'd been close on a couple of other occasions, but they had made it 80 years at this point over 80 years without actually going bankrupt ever. And it finally happened.
They survived the Depression.
Yeah.
A couple world wars.
They survived the 70s. I mean, New York City almost went bankrupt. They didn't.
But they couldn't survive Trump.
Couldn't survive Trump. Who could?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was not good. He becomes also, he's in a lot of poopy. He's in deep shit, is what I'm trying to be politely saying, but this is what I mean. He owes a lot of money, obviously, as you said. And the way he's behaving is like how desperate, troubled men behave, and they become paranoid. And so when he finds out his competitors that want to buy out or buy the Plaza from him, he starts spying on them.
Yeah. Well, and he tries to find like a new buyer before his creditors can, because he thinks that if he can find the buyer, that he can negotiate with them to let him stay on as a manager, or to at least let him build the condos, because he had the first idea of turning a lot of the Plaza rooms into condos. And so he was hoping he could get this new buyer to partner with him and let him do that. So he's trying to outmaneuver the creditors and find a new buyer first. And he found a company that was interested, this immensely rich Asian company called Sun Hung Kai and Company, which was run by three brothers. And he actually got one of the brothers to come over with his family and stay at the Plaza to talk about it. And so they put them inside the presidential suite that Ivana had redone, and it was gorgeous and elegant. But the door to their room got stuck and they couldn't get it open. And they had to call somebody up to basically hack it open with an axe. And the family was so freaked out and traumatized that they were like, no, obviously this isn't going to happen. And they left. And so when they went and told Trump what had happened, he freaks out and just runs over to the Plaza and starts firing people. He was firing people who didn't even work there. He was like telling guests they were fired.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
that's how The Apprentice.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. He kept that line for syndication later.
I understand the frustration, but he obviously has no control over his emotions. But yeah, I forgot about that story.
But then after that, so that falls through. He can't find any other buyers, obviously. And yeah, he has one of his employees start spying on the business people that his creditors are in negotiations with. So this
like Richard Nixon style.
Yeah, like this was a guy named Quek from Singapore and a Saudi prince named Prince Al Walid. They were talking about partnering to buy the Plaza together. And so they stay at the Plaza to do these negotiations, and they're staying in the Vanderbilt suite. And there's a secret room in this suite that that Trump's employee had been told about. And so he hides out in this suite, in the secret room, and listens to their plans. And he finds out that they are talking about getting $100 million from a bank as part of their loan. And so he calls that same bank and asks for $100 million loan for the Plaza, and confuses the bank employees because now they've had 2 phone calls about this and they don't know what's going on. So he's like trying to ruin their chances of getting this money. They even call the fire department and report that there's a fire at the plaza to break up the negotiations that are going on. So
the most petty man ever.
So the fire department comes over and makes everyone leave the plaza for days, saying that there's going to be structural damage. It's going to be unstable. So they did a lot to try to, a lot of shenanigans.
Well, he just sounds like, it's like, oh, you're bad at business, so now you're going to make it difficult for everyone else. Like,
and he only stopped because his banks found out what he was doing and called him and were like, look, if you ever want us to help you with any other of your real estate deals, or like if you don't want us to basically take everything from you, like right now you're losing the plaza, but we can make it where you lose everything else, then you need to stop this. Yeah, they had to threaten him. And so he finally was like, okay,
he's a child.
We're going to
let go. No wonder
he
he thought the plaza was stolen from him. Probably. Yeah. They stole it from me. That's what he thinks. He did. I will give him one credit. He does come up with the idea of converting those hotel rooms to condos. And the reason he can't get it done, and I think that was his like saving grace of investment to like get people excited. I don't know if that was before the bankruptcy or after, but was one of the 39 widows who lived there in a rent-controlled apartment, Fanny Lowenstein. What did they call her? The Eloise from hell?
Yeah.
This woman was a piece of work. She had a rent-controlled apartment, 3-bedroom. She was paying $800 a month. They could have gotten like $1,200 a night for that place. And the reason that she got away with it is because after the war, they like froze rents or something. And she's been living there for that long. And legally, there was nothing that they can do. And so she made it impossible for Trump to be able to do anything. And I think also his financial situations, that people were like, no one's going to buy a condo for $8 million in Manhattan. Turns out they were wrong.
Yeah.
But she sounded like a fucking nightmare. She caused everyone problems. She caused the original, that manager, Salamane. She's the one that said, I think they're cutting up the staff is cutting up my
that
sweaters.
Was Olga Levy. That was a different widow.
Olga Levy, that wasn't her.
Yeah.
And she was also a pain in the ass, this lady. And she blamed Trump for like the air quality in the plaza.
Oh, yeah. She kept saying that like her air was polluted and she couldn't breathe.
Yeah. And she, she would just like sit and complain. Everyone avoided her. They had to like walk outside. The manager, Salamane, would go outside in the winter to avoid the lobby to get to the other side of the building so he didn't have to deal with this woman, because she would just sit there and like criticize and annoy the shit out of everyone. And they couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't kick her out. She was like inherited in the plaza. If you get the plaza, you get Fanny Lowenstein.
Can you imagine like the collective sigh of relief when she finally died? Like, is that the legacy you want to leave behind, that people are relieved when you stop breathing?
Hated her. The staff hated her. She just sounded like a miserable person. And how can you be so miserable? You live in the plaza for cheap.
Nothing. Yeah.
For nothing. Like, I would have made it so that I was loved and adored. They wouldn't want me to leave. And then I'd give that place to my family members. So
so I can stay rent control.
But of course, someone like her, I don't think had kids or any family members that liked her.
Probably not.
They're like, no thanks. Eventually, he does sell the plaza. And he sells it for a loss.
Yeah, he sells it to the prince, the Saudi prince, and the Singapore businessman. They buy it in 95, this finally happens, for $325 million. So 83 million less than what Trump had paid for it 7 years ago. It was 7 years earlier. God. So yeah. So, and that partnership owns it for almost a decade. And they had actually made a deal with Trump that if they sold the plaza within 7 years, that he would get a cut, or if they made and sold condos before they sold it, that he would get a cut of that. But neither of those things happened. So even though condos eventually did happen in the plaza, Trump didn't see a penny.
Yeah. Thank God.
Yeah, he didn't need any more money.
Yeah. Oh, well, he definitely needed the money, but I just
but he didn't need any more money to work with.
Yeah. I just,
no more investment opportunities.
It's like personal, sure, everyone has his opinions about him, but the more you read about him and his behavior and his business technique, this man should not be in charge. Like, this is not a good businessman. This is not a good leader. He has questionable morals. And the fact that, just like, you're trying to sabotage a situation that's actually there to help you because you fucked up so bad and you can't let it go. Like, you're a baby.
Yeah.
You're immature. And just, I don't like anything I read. And this is all like politics aside. This has nothing to do with the politics of anything. This is strictly just his behavior on the business of the Plaza.
Yeah. Just, outlandish, ridiculous.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
No, I reject him.
So this pair owns the Plaza until 2004, when it changes hands again. And this is when a real estate developer, a real estate company named Elad, buys the Plaza, and they buy it for $675 million. And so,
but what, it wasn't so straightforward, that purchasing.
No, but if you want to know more about that, you can read the book, because it was so convoluted.
It was, it was a lot of negotiation.
Yes,
a lot of they went through a lot. But the guys that owned or ran Elad, they did change up the Plaza a lot, and they made it make a lot more money. And they did eventually change the hotel rooms to the condos. So what was potentially going to be sold for $8 million was sold for like $53 million.
Yeah, they had some very
they had issues with it.
They had, but yeah. So this was the first time that someone not like in the hotel business has bought it. Like, they bought it specifically because they wanted to turn a lot of it into condos, and then also make a lot of retail space inside of it. So they buy it in 2004 in summer. Just before Christmas, they make the announcement that they are closing the Oak Room, closing the Oyster Bar, and they're going to lay off almost 200 employees. And they're planning on basically closing the Plaza for 2.5 years, because that's how long the renovation is going to take. And it's going to cost like $450 million to turn it into this multi-use space with condos and retail stores. And they want it to be a boutique hotel. They wanted to only have 150 hotel rooms. But so, 200 people are about to lose their jobs. So the New York Hotel and Motel Trades Council gets involved, which is led by Peter Ward at the time. So they want to increase the number of hotel rooms that the Plaza is going to keep. And they also want to negotiate a new severance agreement that would double the payout to any employees that are laid off, which Elad was like, no, we're not going to do that. Like, we have a union contract already. We're abiding by our contract. We don't need to do anything else. So no, absolutely not. And so Ward, however, had been in politics for a while. He had allies. Elad had no political allies in New York. And so Ward really played that to his advantage. He called in favors. He created rallies. He created a campaign called Save the Plaza, and he got celebrity endorsements. They had television and radio spots. Like, they turned it into a media circus. They had a rally. Their first rally was at the Pulitzer Fountain, and even the Reverend Jesse Jackson showed up
to
save the Plaza, save the workers. So the New York Landmarks Conservancy got involved because even though they weren't going to break any of the rules about changing the facade, they were going to renovate rooms inside that had a lot of original details. Mm-hmm. And so this conservancy didn't want that to happen. So they got involved. And so then finally, at the time, Mayor Bloomberg decides to insert himself into the situation to try to foster a compromise. It was re-election time for him. So he saw a prime opportunity to show that he was, on the side of the working man and on the side of New York history and all of that. So it didn't help. I mean, it didn't hurt that this union he was working with had a very large voting block. They had like 35,000 members. So yeah. Which I thought it was so interesting that Bloomberg made a big deal about how he was going to foster this compromise. And then he didn't actually participate in the negotiations. He assigned a chief of staff for one of his deputy mayors to do it. So they spent 60 hours negotiating the whole time with Elad still kind of being like, we don't have to do this. Right? Why are we doing this? We don't have to do this. We're just doing this now because it's become, this crazy, terrible publicity for us. So they finally agree that the Plaza would have 282 rooms instead of 150. Common spaces like the ballroom and the oak room and the palm court are going to be renovated and preserved. And then they would actually keep 350 of their 900 employees and give more generous severance packages to those that they were laying off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they definitely got taken to task a little bit, but I mean, they still made $1 billion in profit off of their condos and retail space because they leased out every single possible thing they could. Like they leased the basement to a bakery. They had a restaurateur lease out the restaurant. So even though it's technically, a restaurant in the Plaza, it's not run by the Plaza anymore. They had an event company is in charge of the ballroom now. So
yeah, it's, I've been there before the pandemic, everything was open. It was great. The food is like amazing. And there is a section that's cut off for the condos that you can't even enter. Like there's a separate entrance and everything, but you're buying a $600 million hotel and people are telling you what you can and cannot do with it.
Yeah.
And I understand preserving it and I'm all for that. But you still have to make, hard decisions to make a business. It's still, no one's going to buy it if they're not making money off of it.
Yeah.
So I kind of give him credit. He did some smart things. He didn't do the greatest craftsmanship in the condos. Those people that were buying it, like Russian oligarchs, their wives came in and were like, bitch, why is my $53 million condo shitty? And then he had to knock it down to like $10 million or something.
Yeah, it was
really ridiculous.
People were not happy at all. There was like random like columns in the middle that would just be in the middle of the living room. Like it was not laid out well. Yeah, people were not happy.
I think they didn't know what they were getting themselves into.
Yeah.
And obviously they realized that, but it was too late. And then eventually they did sell it, their share, right? They sold their.
Yes. Although at this point, Prince Al Walid actually jumps back in and buys back into a piece of the pie. So he becomes part owner now again.
But then there is the Indian business.
Yeah. So in 2012, this Indian billionaire, Subrata Roy, decides to buy the Plaza after visiting one time. He wanted to buy a hotel, and his friend, he was asking about the Four Seasons, and his friend said, no, you don't want to buy that hotel. Let me take you to the hotel that you'll fall in love with after one visit. So he takes him there. He doesn't even spend the night there. He just kind of goes in and hangs out for a little bit and decides to buy it.
Quickly, that doesn't turn out the way everyone thinks it does.
No, well, he pays $570 million for his 70% stake. Al Walid still has a 20% stake. But a month after this deal is announced, it turns out that he has been ruled against in the Indian Supreme Court. They say that he improperly marketed $3 billion in bonds that it had sold to millions of investors from like the poorest parts of India, like poverty-stricken people. Yeah. Yeah, he was a fraud. And they tacked on like a 15% annual interest on top of that. So basically all of his money was about to go to repaying all of these people that he had defrauded. So he goes to jail and yeah. Yeah, he like had faked documents. So this part, oh my gosh, billionaires are just the most dramatic people, I think.
Yes.
In the entire world. Like first he says he can't comply with the court's request for documents because his employees are away for summer holiday. So he's basically like, oh, no one works here right now, so I can't give you any documents. And then he sends 127 trucks of documents to the government office with 31,000 cartons of files. And in all of these files, it was just like nonsense information with missing addresses. This one investor's name shows up like 6,000 different times. It's all just like made up Yeah, the court is like, okay, either you've made all of this up and we don't actually know where you've gotten all of your money, probably from somewhere illegal, or you're the worst record keeper of all time.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, he obviously is full of shit.
Yeah, exactly. So that goes down in 2014. He's arrested. So he was a very short-term owner of the Plaza.
Probably the shortest.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
And
then after him, it's still owned by Al-Walid, right?
Yeah,
but
he still had the 20% stake, I believe.
It gets sold to a Qatari business.
Yeah, Qatar Hospitality buys it in 2018, and that's who still currently owns it.
Yeah. And that is owned by the Qatari government, I think.
Yeah. So
God
cool.
Damn it. Well, that's a little information everyone should be aware of. The Qatari government owns the Plaza. Doesn't make me feel that great, especially knowing how shitty they are and just everything. And it's also weird. I don't think like that's good that they own this like American historic hotel, right? It's just not.
It is a little, yeah. You would kind of want that to stay domestic, but mostly you just don't want it to be owned by terrible people.
Yeah, it's like it almost makes Trump owning it look not so bad.
Yeah,
almost. But yeah, I wish I've said this to you. I wish like some other billionaire would buy it.
Right. Because obviously at this point, that's who it's going to be, is if not a corporation, then a billionaire.
Yeah. I wonder how much they bought it for, the Qatari group. They must have bought it for, if it was like sold for 600 million the last time, it's probably like 800 million.
Yeah. Let me see. I think, if I don't remember if she says or not in the epilogue.
But also they're buying it from that Indian billionaire who's going to have to sell it at a loss.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like they own that 70% and they got a really good deal because this guy was such an idiot. And
yeah, that could be.
But if they ever want to sell it, that's when, with inflation, I think they would have to sell Plaza for $1 billion. Right?
Yeah.
At least.
At this point, yeah.
It has to be something like that. It would have to be a bunch of investors, because now that I'm realizing it, it's like even at the end, you have to have more than one. Because who has just like $1 billion to own a building?
Here it is. They paid $600 million for the entire property, including the guest rooms, unsold condos and retail spaces, buying up Roy's majority share as well as Al-Walid's stakes.
Oh my God, that's crazy. That's a really good deal.
The luxury condos owned by individual buyers were not part of the deal.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
But still. They didn't have to pay that much more than the other owners.
No. Yeah. They
most recent.
Got quite the deal. Yeah.
Well, hopefully, Elon Musk, if you're listening, I'm kidding. People would not be happy if
he has enough on his plate. Yeah.
I know. I just invest. You don't have to be involved. He doesn't need to show up and sleep there. Stay at the Twitter headquarters.
Yeah. Just anyone without human rights violations buy it. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
like the bar is not that high.
For billionaires, it is. I think we are asking for too much. Like, how did you get $1 billion?
Yeah.
You don't want to know. So that concludes the current situation of the Plaza, who owns it, how it's run. But just to go over some of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about, and that is every single film, TV show that was filmed at the Plaza. And there is a whole book dedicated to this. We can link it, or we can, we'll make sure people are aware of the books that we read to do research. But one of my favorite movies that I only watched recently, like in the past 2 years, was The Way We Were. And the last scene. Have you seen it?
I haven't. It's on my list. I know it's like one of the most iconic Barbara Streisand movies ever, and I have to, but I know I'm going to bawl my eyes out.
You will.
So I have to really work myself up to knowing that I'm going to cry.
Yeah, it's so good. I would totally watch it with you. It's so good. And I think I watched it like after a breakup or something.
Oh, yeah.
It's the perfect kind of movie to watch. But at the end, the last scene, Barbara Streisand's character and Robert Redford's character meets right in front of the Plaza Hotel. It's just like so iconic. It's the 70s.
Yeah.
And she says like a famous line.
Yeah. And that's the scene that they reenacted at the end of the first season of Sex and the City, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So Sex and the City has filmed there a bunch of times. Home Alone.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned
Bride Wars.
What was it?
Oh, Bride Wars.
Bride Wars.
Love that one.
But you mentioned to me Crocodile Dundee was filmed there.
Crocodile Dundee is responsible for popularizing the hotel with Australians. So back in the late 80s, they actually took the lead in foreign business for the hotel. It had previously been the Japanese, but Crocodile Dundee switched it on over to the Australians.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I think every time probably they film there, there's like a boost and whatever, like the audience that watches it. And there's a lot of older movies like North by Northwest. Sabrina, The Apartment, I believe. Maybe no. So many. It's really hard to. Gossip Girl, obviously.
Yeah. And there was also a really famous play featured there called Plaza Suite, where 3 different couples spend a night in Suite 719. And for a long time, like people would call and request Suite 719 because of this play. But Suite 719, I think, didn't actually exist, or it was not. It was like one of the tiny closet rooms. And so they were like, sorry, we can't.
Yeah. They're like, you don't really want to stay.
Yeah, you don't want that room.
I think that's good for, to get business for the Plaza to keep making it relevant in like pop culture.
Yeah, I mean, like in the 90s, Home Alone, I'm sure like completely made our entire generation aware of the Plaza. Like people would call constantly and ask, because in the movie they used their real hotel phone number, and so people would pause it and call the number and ask for Kevin McAllister.
Well, you know what? It is public information. So
I think they just didn't. They just weren't thinking that more than New York would be calling it.
Oh my God! But also, Mariah Carey music video was filmed there.
Oh, that's right.
And a bunch of other, I think, Midnight Cowboy. I'm trying to think of all the movies, but there is a book dedicated to it. So
yeah,
and I'm sure there are going to be more movies and music videos and photo shoots and weddings and
absolutely. Yeah. So that book, if you want to look more into that, is starring the Plaza, Hollywood, Broadway, and High Society Visit the World's Favorite Hotel by Patty Farmer. And I actually referenced another book by Patty Farmer called The Persian Room Presents, where she goes and interviews all of the surviving people who used to perform at the Persian Room. Or if they're no longer alive, then she tries to interview someone close to them, like their former manager or something like that. So that book was really interesting to hear all of the different performers' stories and memories of being there.
That's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And there was another book just called The Hotel that is just fun. It's just a fun read. It was written in the late 80s, right as Trump had just bought the hotel and hadn't really started making a lot of changes yet. But it's a week in the life of all of the different people who work in the hotel. So the author basically tags along with like the different departments in the hotel, with the managers, the maids, the chefs, the bell people. Yeah. Like it was really interesting to hear everybody's stories. He trails along the light bulb guy whose only job is to change all of the light bulbs.
I remember that. Because at the time, the light bulbs would go out all the time and constantly need changing.
Yeah. So he was just like running basically all day trying to keep all of the hotel lights on.
That's hilarious. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So that book I got on Amazon. So it was just called The Hotel. If anybody's interested in that snapshot from the late 80s.
Yeah. And there is also something else I wanted to mention. The band celebrities of the plot, like celebrities who are banned from the Plaza.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Charlie Sheen.
Wrecked
a hotel room. Drugs and a hooker, I believe, was involved. And then
I don't remember if he was banned, but Mickey Rourke like caused like $20,000 of damage.
Yeah, and he's also done that to other hotels. I'm pretty sure. I mean, wouldn't you ban them?
Yeah.
If it's your hotel?
Absolutely. Especially now that I know how hard it is to make money as a hotel.
Yeah, I would ban. I don't blame them. I mean, that's very disrespectful, honestly. And if the Beatles could behave themselves, so can Mickey Rourke and Charlie Sheen and everyone else. And also one last thing I want to mention, or we should mention, is that article that talks about the craziest things that people who work in hotels have experienced. So,
yes.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Yes.
The guy, so there's this, I think it was in the Plaza. One day, like the workers, they keep coming across empty lobster shells in the fountain. In some fountain or in something somewhere. And they were like, where are these coming from? Like, it's happening all the time. Finally, they realized that some prince or some fancy ass person staying in one of the rooms up top doesn't know how to use a garbage and lobster shells. And he just literally throws it out of his room into the fountain, thinking the servants will just clean it up. Like, that's where you put your garbage. And they're just like, no, sir, you have
to see this tiny little bin here.
Yeah. Or just leave it on your freaking tray. Don't throw it outside. Like, what are you doing?
We'll handle it. You stop.
Yeah. So like ridiculous stories like that.
If you just Google butler stories at the Plaza, it will come up.
But the story about the couple.
Oh my gosh. There's a couple ordered something for their room, and the guy takes it up there and knocks on the door, and nobody answers, and he knocks again, and they say, come in, and he goes in, and they're in bed waiting for him to arrive so that they can start having sex, because I guess they were exhibitionists.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So he's just like sets down what they need and is like, oh, excuse me, I'm out.
Yeah. Like, people have done weird shit. There are a lot of stories like that. I think there's kind of, like you said back in the first episode, like hotels make people act differently than they might. because and it's the same way the people will go online, use an anonymous account, and do weird and mean shit.
Yeah.
And I think hotels are like, I don't think you can quite get away with what you can get away with saying online. But basically, it's like you're a new person.
Yeah.
And that's why all the affairs happen in hotels.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sure there's a book dedicated to that. I don't know about the Plaza, but I'm sure there's a ton. There has to be. But yeah, every fascinating story. That article just about, it was like 5 or 10 stories or something, and they're all ridiculous. But it's really interesting. The Plaza, I think, doing the amount of research we did, I have a lot more respect for it, and the people that work there and the people that run it. And honestly, the people that wrote the books about it. Wow.
Yeah.
Lots of research.
Oh my gosh. Major shout out, especially to Julie Sato, who wrote the one that we are constantly referencing, because just the immense amount of research that had to have gone into that. I'm tired of the Plaza after only a couple of months, and she wrote such an in-depth book about it. I don't know how she did it. But I'm glad she did. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm fair. Yeah, thank you, Julie. That was great. It made our job easier.
Yes,
because you already did all the research. But and thorough, well done research, not just Yoko Ono, or what is it?
Yeah, what do they say? Yoli Ono in the internet article.
Yoni Ono dying with John Lennon in the Plaza. Apparently, not that kind of research where it's made up.
Not internet. It was not internet research.
Not
real research.
Alternative facts, as someone would say. But yeah, fascinating. I think that I'm going to go back to the Plaza and maybe get a more thorough tour, because I went there while we were doing research and after we recorded the first episode, but I still was too shy to go up and talk to anyone about it. Like, I spoke to the bartender and he was really nice. And then I went to celebrate. They had an open party for their 115th birthday, and it had little dancers and live music and free champagne and cake. And I showed that on our Instagram and TikTok. And it was so fun. It was so nice. But I still felt like embarrassed. I was like, I can't go up to them and ask if they can give me a story or, show me around, But I think I have to get over myself, and hopefully next time.
Yeah,
I'm there.
Definitely.
Yeah. But also, if you guys want to follow and learn more about the Plaza, we do post like little stories and pictures on our Instagram, and that is at Hotel History. Man, I can't talk today. Hotel History Pod or podcast.
The Instagram is Hotel History Podcast.
And then our Twitter is Hotel History Pod, I believe, and our TikTok is Hotel History. And then if you want to just listen to any of our episodes, it's where you can get your podcasts on Spotify, on Apple, Google, all of it.
Tons. We're working on getting them on all of the directories, but they are on all the major directories.
And if you want to email us at hotelhistorypodcast@gmail.com. We will take all the questions you have and
or stories. We would love to hear any interesting hotel stories that you might have.
Yeah. Is there anything else we should ask the audience? The one person. Hi, Mom. She'll just text me if she has a question.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that wraps up the Plaza. So stay tuned for our next hotel. Hopefully it will come a lot sooner than this one.
Yeah. And thank you so much for listening.